If you've ever driven through Utah at 3 a.m., you know the kind of darkness I'm talking about. Not just the absence of light, but the kind that feels thick, like it's pressing in on the glass. That's the darkness that swallowed me as I pulled up to the diner, my new place of penance, my last shot at staying clean, or at least out of jail. The neon sign buzzed overhead, flickering between open and pen, like it couldn't decide if it was inviting me in or warning me off. The parking lot was empty except for a battered semi and a sedan with Nevada plates. I killed the engine, and for a second, I just sat there, gripping the wheel. My hands itched, not for a fix, not exactly, just for something to do, something to hold on to. I watched the desert for movement, but there was nothing, just the cliffs, the endless stretch of highway, and the moonless sky swallowing it all. Inside the diner was a time capsule from the 70s. Cracked vinyl booths, a jukebox humming to itself in the corner, and a clock above the counter stuck at 3:33. The air smelled of burnt coffee and fryer oil, layered over with something sweet and cloying, like pie left out too long. Chloe was waiting for me behind the counter. She looked like she'd been up for 3 days straight, but still managed to smile. "You must be Ray," she said, voice low and kind, like she already knew I needed it. "Welcome to nowhere." She handed me an apron. "Couple of rules," she said, counting them off on her fingers. "Don't look in the walk-in after midnight. Don't touch the mirrors in the restrooms. Don't eat anything Reggie makes unless you see him cook it. And if the jukebox starts playing by itself, just let it." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her eyes didn't. "You'll get used to it," she said, and I wondered if that was a promise or a threat. Reggie was already in the kitchen, humming something tuneless and off-key. He was tall, pale, and moved like he was underwater, smooth, too smooth. He didn't blink when he looked at me, just smiled and slid a slice of pie across the counter. "House specialty," he said, voice syrupy and wrong. "On the house." I shook my head, stomach twisting. "Maybe later." He didn't seem offended, just kept humming, slicing, moving. I caught my reflection in the chrome of the coffee machine and startled. My face lagged behind, a fraction of a second too slow, like a bad video call. I blinked hard, chalked it up to nerves. The first customer was a trucker, hands like shovels, eyes red-rimmed from the road. He ordered coffee and pie, ate the whole slice in one bite, never chewing. I watched him, waiting for a punchline, but he just stared through me, eyes unfocused, mouth working on nothing. A woman in a sun hat took the booth by the window. She didn't order. She just stared at me, unblinking, for 5 whole minutes while I pretended to wipe down the counter. I tried to meet her gaze, but it was like looking into a well, deep, cold, and bottomless. I escaped to the restroom, splashed water on my face. The mirror was fogged, but when I wiped it, my reflection didn't move. It just stood there, watching, a half-second behind. I pressed my hand to the glass. When I pulled it away, there was a greasy handprint. Bigger than mine, the fingers too long, the palm too wide. I stumbled out, heart racing. Chloe was gone, and Reggie was nowhere to be seen. The jukebox started up, playing a song I'd never heard. Something old, something sad. The clock above the counter still read 3:33. I needed air. I pushed through the swinging kitchen door, hoping for a back exit. The freezer door was ajar, a cold mist spilling out. I stepped closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. Inside, pressed into the frost, was a handprint. Not human. Too big. Too many fingers. The outline smeared like it had melted into the metal. I touched it, and the cold burned my skin. It was still warm. The freezer door swung shut behind me with a soft, deliberate click. I jerked back, heart hammering, and fumbled for the handle. It opened easily, no resistance, just the faintest whisper of suction as the cold air spilled out. I stared at the handprint in the frost, the shape already blurring as the mist crept over it, as if the freezer itself wanted to erase the evidence. I pressed my own hand to the spot, comparing sizes. The print was at least twice as large, the fingers too long, almost jointless, as if someone had pressed a bundle of pale sausages into the ice. I shivered and wiped my palm on my jeans, trying to steady my breathing. The kitchen was empty. No sign of Reggie, no sound except the low hum of the fridge and the distant, scratchy croon of the jukebox. I stepped back out into the main room. The clock above the counter still read 3:33, the second hand twitching backward, then forward, then back again. The woman in the sun hat was gone. The trucker's plate was empty, a smear of red filling on the edge. I realized I hadn't seen him leave. "Chloe?" I called, voice cracking in the silence. No answer. I checked the break room. Her purse was there, slumped on the battered couch, keys dangling from the strap. Her jacket was draped over the armrest, a pack of cigarettes poking out of the pocket. I grabbed the pack, thinking maybe she'd just stepped outside for a smoke, but the cigarettes were all there, untouched. I pulled out my phone. No bars. I tried the landline behind the counter. Dead. The dial tone was gone, replaced by a faint, rhythmic clicking, like someone tapping on glass far away. I hung up and stared at the receiver, half expecting it to ring. It didn't. The air in the diner felt thicker, heavier. I glanced at the windows. Outside, the desert was gone, replaced by a flat, endless blackness. No moon, no stars, not even the faint glow of headlights on the highway. Just the reflection of the neon sign, flickering on the glass, spelling "open" and "pen" over and over in sickly green. I walked the length of the counter, running my hand along the cracked formica. Something crinkled under my palm. I looked down and found a napkin, folded into a neat triangle. In smeared, shaky handwriting, it read, "Don't eat the pie." My stomach twisted. I remembered the trucker, the way he'd swallowed the slice whole, the way his eyes had glazed over. I remembered Chloe's warning, the way she'd looked at Reggie when she thought I wasn't watching. I wondered if she'd written the note, or if someone else had left it for her. I checked the restrooms, calling her name. The mirrors were fogged, but I could see shapes moving behind the glass, shadows that didn't match my own, flickering in and out of focus. I didn't touch them. I didn't want to see what would happen if I did. Back in the main room, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the kitchen. I ducked behind the counter, heart pounding, and watched as Reggie emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. His eyes found me immediately, as if he'd known exactly where I'd be. "Chloe clocked out early," he said, voice smooth as syrup. "She said to tell you goodbye." I stared at him, trying to read his face. His smile never wavered. He turned and walked back into the kitchen, humming that same off-key tune, the sound echoing off the tile and steel. I waited until he was gone, then crept to the back door. It was locked, the key missing from the hook. I tried the windows, unmoving, cold to the touch, the glass thick and warped. I pressed my forehead to the pane, searching for any sign of the world outside. But there was nothing, just my own reflection, pale and wide-eyed, staring back at me. I went back to the break room and sat on the couch, clutching Chloe's purse in my lap. I thought about calling for help, about smashing a window, about running into the blackness outside. But something in me, some old, familiar fear, kept me rooted. I remembered the rules. Don't look in the walk-in after midnight. Don't touch the mirrors. Don't eat the pie. I closed my eyes and listened to the diner breathe. The hum of the fridge, the whisper of the jukebox, the ticking of the clock, backward and forward, never quite settling on a direction. Somewhere, a door creaked open. I heard footsteps, soft, dragging, like someone walking in socks. I opened my eyes. The napkin was gone. I was alone. I sat there for a long time, clutching Chloe's purse like it might anchor me to something real. The silence pressed in, heavy and absolute, broken only by the low hum of the fridge and the jukebox's faint, looping melody. I tried to remember the last time I'd felt this alone. Maybe it was in detox, lying on a cot in a room full of strangers. Or maybe it was every night since I got out, staring at the ceiling and waiting for the sun. But this was different. This was worse. I forced myself up, moving through the diner in slow, careful steps. The place felt bigger now, the booths stretching away into the dark like a funhouse mirror. I passed the counter, eyes flicking to the clock. Still 3:33, the second hand shuddering in place. The napkin was gone, but a faint, greasy smear remained where it had been, as if someone had pressed their thumb into the formica and dragged it away. The regulars were back. I hadn't heard the bell over the door, but suddenly they were there, filling the booths and stools. The trucker sat hunched over his empty plate, jaw working on nothing. The woman in the sun hat stared at her coffee, unmoving. In the corner booth, a family of 4, mother, father, 2 kids, sat perfectly still, eyes glazed, mouths slightly open. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. I moved closer, heart thudding in my chest. The air felt wrong, thick and syrupy, like I was wading through honey. I reached out, almost touching the back of the father's head, but stopped myself. His skin was too smooth, too pale, like wax left in the sun. The mother's eyes flicked to me, just for a second, and I saw something move behind them, a flicker of hunger or fear or both. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a stool. The jukebox crackled, skipping to a new song, something slow and mournful, the lyrics just out of reach. I caught a glimpse of myself in the chrome of the napkin dispenser, face stretched and distorted, eyes too wide. I looked away. I needed answers. I needed something to make sense. I ducked into the storeroom, searching for anything that might help. A phone, a weapon, a way out. The room was cramped and cluttered, boxes stacked to the ceiling, shelves sagging under the weight of canned peaches and powdered eggs. I rifled through the drawers, finding nothing but receipts and old menus. Then I saw them, newspaper clippings, yellowed and brittle, taped to the inside of the cabinet door. I peeled one free, heart sinking as I read the headline, "Local man vanishes on Highway 50, last seen at roadside diner." Another, "Family disappears without a trace, witnesses recall strange waitress." Dozens of names, dozens of faces, all lost somewhere between the cliffs and the desert. All of them last seen here. I heard footsteps behind me, slow, dragging, like someone pulling their feet through mud. I spun, hard in my throat, but the doorway was empty. Just the flicker of fluorescent light, the hum of the fridge. I stuffed the clippings into my pocket and slipped back into the main room. The regulars were watching me now. Every head turned in unison, eyes blank and hungry. The trucker's mouth opened wide, wider than it should have, jaw unhinging with a wet pop. The woman in the sun hat smiled, lips peeling back to reveal teeth too sharp, too many. The family in the booth began to rock back and forth, bodies moving in perfect sync, like marionettes on invisible strings. I bolted for the door, slamming my shoulder into the glass. It didn't budge. I tried the windows, pounding with both fists, but they were cold and unyielding, the darkness outside pressing in like a living thing. I screamed, voice muffled by the thick, greasy air. The jukebox stopped. The silence was absolute. I staggered back, chest heaving, and pressed myself against the counter. The regulars watched me, unblinking, as if waiting for something. I remembered the rules. Don't eat the pie. Don't look in the walk-in. Don't touch the mirrors. I wondered what would happen if I broke them. I wondered if I already had. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, willing myself to wake up, to snap out of whatever nightmare I'd stumbled into. When I opened them, the regulars were gone. The booths were empty, the stools bare. The only sound was the clock, ticking backward, then forward, then back again. I was alone. Again. But I knew better now. I wasn't alone. Not really. Not ever. Something was hungry. The silence after the regulars vanished was worse than their staring. I stood there, pressed against the counter, listening for any sign of movement, my own breath too loud, the clock's broken rhythm scraping at my nerves. I told myself I'd hallucinated the whole thing, that it was the stress, the lack of sleep, the ghosts of old cravings clawing at my brain. But I could still feel the weight of their eyes on me, the memory of that impossible hunger. I forced myself to move. My legs felt numb, heavy, as if the diner itself was trying to root me in place. I stumbled through the swinging kitchen door, half expecting Reggie to be waiting with that too-wide smile and a fresh slice of pie. But the kitchen was empty, the overhead lights buzzing and flickering. The freezer door was closed now, a thin rime of frost creeping across the handle. I remembered Chloe's warning, don't look in the walk-in after midnight. I looked away, fighting the urge to check if the handprint was still there. Instead, I scanned the room, searching for any sign of her. The only thing out of place was a battered blue locker in the corner, the door hanging open. I crossed the kitchen in 3 quick steps, heart pounding. Inside the locker was a mess of personal junk, lip balm, a cracked phone, a dog-eared paperback, and wedged at the bottom, a notebook, its cover stained and curling at the edges. I pulled it out, flipping through the pages with shaking hands. The first few entries were normal, schedules, grocery lists, half-finished poems. Then the handwriting changed, growing frantic, the lines crammed close together. He watches me. He never eats. The others, sometimes I think they're just pretending. Last week the freezer door was open. Something moved inside. I heard it breathing. If you're reading this, don't eat the food. Don't let him see you scared. He likes it when you're scared. I turned the page. A crude drawing filled the sheet. A figure with too many arms, too many eyes, wearing a paper hat. Below it, a single sentence. It wears faces. It wears jobs. It feeds on the lonely. My hand shook. I remembered the newspaper clippings, the missing people, the way the regulars moved in perfect, unnatural sync. I thought about the rules, the rituals Chloe had rattled off my first night. Rules to keep something at bay, or to keep us from noticing what was already here. The next page was a warning, scrawled in red ink. It can't hurt you unless you eat what it serves. I snapped the notebook shut, pulse racing. I remembered the trucker, the pie, the way his jaw had unhinged. I remembered the woman in the sun hat, her teeth too sharp, her smile too wide. I wondered if they'd ever been real, or if they were just masks the thing wore, puppets for its hunger. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun, clutching the notebook like a shield. Reggie stood in the doorway, blocking out the light. He held a plate in his hands, a slice of pie so glossy and red it looked like it was bleeding. "You look hungry, Ray," he said, voice syrupy and slow. "You should eat. You'll feel better. You'll never be alone again." His smile stretched, impossibly wide, splitting his face in two. His eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just stared, empty and endless. I backed away, notebook clutched to my chest. "Where's Chloe?" I managed, my voice a whisper. He tilted his head, considering. "She's gone. They all go, eventually. But you're different. You're still hungry." The lights flickered, buzzing louder. The air grew thick, heavy, every breath a struggle. I glanced at the clock through the kitchen window. Still 3:33, the second hand now spinning in frantic circles. Reggie stepped closer, the pie trembling on the plate. "Eat," he said, voice echoing, doubling, tripling, as if 100 mouths were speaking through him. "Eat and stay." I stumbled back, slamming into the freezer. The cold bit through my shirt, grounding me. I remembered the notebook's warning, the rules, the greasy handprint in the frost. Reggie's smile never wavered. He set the plate on the counter, the pie glistening under the harsh lights. "I'll be waiting," he said, and vanished back into the shadows, humming that same off-key tune. I slid to the floor, clutching the notebook, the warning echoing in my head. It can't hurt you unless you eat what it serves, but I was so hungry. I sat there on the cold kitchen floor, the battered notebook pressed to my chest, watching the pie sweat under the harsh fluorescent lights. My stomach twisted, a hollow ache gnawing at my insides. I tried to remember the last time I'd eaten, really eaten, not just coffee and cigarettes. But the memories were slippery, out of reach. Hunger had always been a part of me, a shadow at my back. I thought I'd left it behind in rehab, but now it was back, sharper than ever, whispering that maybe just one bite would make it all stop. The pie glistened, syrup pooling on the plate, the crust impossibly golden. The scent was overwhelming, sweet, rich, laced with something metallic. I pressed my hand to my mouth, fighting the urge to crawl across the linoleum and devour it. The notebook's warning echoed in my head, but it felt distant, muffled by the ache in my belly and the heaviness in my chest. Somewhere out in the diner, the jukebox started up again, louder this time, the music warped and discordant. The regulars returned, filling the booths and stools without a sound. Their movements were jerky, puppet-like, as if someone else was pulling the strings. The trucker's mouth hung open, drool pooling on his chin. The woman in the sun hat tapped her fingers on the formica, each tap perfectly in time with the ticking clock. The family in the booth rocked back and forth, eyes wide and empty. I forced myself to stand, legs trembling. The air was thick, syrupy, every breath a struggle. I clutched the notebook, the pages slick with sweat, and stepped out into the main room. The regulars turned to face me in unison, their heads snapping around with a sickening crack. Their mouths stretched, impossibly wide, revealing rows of sharp, glistening teeth. They began to chant, voices overlapping, distorted, the words just out of reach. Reggie stood behind the counter, hands folded, smile fixed and empty. He slid the plate of pie toward me, the edge scraping against the counter with a sound like nails on glass. "Eat," he said, voice echoing, layered with a dozen others. "You'll feel better. You'll never be alone again." The craving surged, a tidal wave of need. I saw myself reflected in the chrome napkin dispenser, pale, hollow-eyed, mouth open, drool pooling at the corners. I remembered detox, the way my body had screamed for something, anything, to fill the void. I remembered Chloe's warning, the napkin scrawled with shaky letters, "Don't eat the pie." The regulars pressed closer, mouths stretching wider, eyes rolling back in their heads. Their chant grew louder, the words twisting into something that sounded almost like my name. The air vibrated with their hunger, their need, their emptiness. I reached for the plate, fingers trembling. The pie steamed, the scent overwhelming. I raised the fork, poised to take a bite. For a moment, the world narrowed to the slice of pie, the ache in my belly, the promise of relief. Then I saw it, a flash of movement in the corner of my eye. Chloe, pale and shivering, pressed against the glass of the freezer door, her hand leaving a smear of frost. Her lips moved, forming a single word, "Don't." The spell broke. I hurled the plate across the room, pie and syrup splattering against the wall. The regulars shrieked, voices rising in a chorus of rage and hunger. Reggie's smile cracked, splitting his face in two, black ichor oozing from the seams. The lights flickered, the jukebox wailed, the clock spun faster and faster. The diner shook, the walls flexing and breathing. I stumbled back, clutching the notebook, heart pounding. The regulars surged forward, mouths open, hands grasping. I ran, ducking behind the counter, searching for anything to defend myself. My hand closed on a heavy metal spatula, slick with grease. I swung it wildly, the regulars recoiling, hissing, their flesh bubbling and melting where the spatula touched. Reggie howled, voice shattering glass, the sound reverberating through my bones. "You could have stayed," he screamed, face twisting, eyes boiling. "You could have been whole." I backed toward the kitchen, spatula raised, the regulars closing in. The freezer door hung open, Chloe's hand reaching out, beckoning. I dove through the gap, slamming the door behind me. The cold hit me like a fist, stealing my breath. Chloe collapsed into my arms, shivering, eyes wild. "Don't eat," she whispered, voice barely audible. "It's how it gets in. It's how it keeps you." I nodded, clutching her tight, the freezer walls closing in. Outside, the regulars howled, pounding on the door, the sound muffled by layers of frost and steel. We were trapped, but we were still ourselves, still hungry, but not devoured. Not yet. The freezer was a tomb of frost and shadows. My breath came in ragged clouds, each exhale scraping my throat raw. Chloe clung to me, her fingers icy, her eyes too wide in the blue light. We huddled together on the cold floor, backs pressed to the metal shelves, listening to the chaos outside. The regulars pounded on the door, their fists thudding in a rhythm that matched the frantic ticking of the clock beyond. Each blow sent a shudder through the steel, flakes of frost raining down like snow. I tried to steady my breathing, to focus. The cold was a blessing and a curse. It dulled the hunger, slowed the panic, but it also numbed my limbs and thoughts. Chloe's lips moved, but her words were lost in the roar. I leaned closer, straining to hear. "Don't let it in," she whispered, her voice thin and brittle. "Don't eat, don't listen. It feeds on what you want most." I nodded, clutching the notebook to my chest. My mind raced, searching for a way out. The freezer's only exit was the door, now blocked by the thing and its puppets. The vents overhead were too small for an adult, but maybe, just maybe, I could pry one open, buy us time, a sliver of hope. I scanned the shelves for anything useful, boxes of frozen meat, bags of fries, a rusted crowbar wedged behind a crate. I grabbed it, fingers burning from the cold, and jammed it into the vent's screws. Metal screamed, the sound drowned by the howling outside. Chloe watched, her breath fogging the air, her eyes flicking to the door with every crash. The vent cover clattered to the floor. I boosted Chloe up, hands shaking, her body light as paper. She wriggled through the gap, boots scraping against the metal. I followed, heart pounding, the notebook wedged under my arm. The vent was a coffin, tight, dark, every breath a struggle. I crawled after Chloe, the metal biting into my knees, the cold seeping into my bones. Behind us, the freezer door burst open. The regulars poured in, their bodies twisting, mouths open in silent screams. Reggie's voice echoed through the vents, warped and many-layered. "You can't leave, Ray. You belong here. You're hungry. You're mine." I crawled faster, scraping my knuckles raw. Chloe reached the end of the vent, kicking out the grate. Light spilled in, a storage closet, empty except for cleaning supplies and a mop bucket. We tumbled out, gasping, the air warmer but thick with the scent of bleach and rot. Chloe slumped against the wall, shivering. "We have to break the rules," she said, voice shaking. "It's the only way out. The rules are its trap." I remembered the list. Don't look in the walk-in, don't touch the mirrors, don't eat the pie. Each rule a leash, a way to keep us docile, afraid. I realized then, the rules weren't for our safety. They were for its convenience. I helped Chloe to her feet, adrenaline burning away the cold. We crept into the hallway, the diner warped and shifting. The booth stretched impossibly long, the lights flickering, the clock above the counter spinning faster and faster. The regulars prowled the aisles, heads snapping back and forth, searching, sniffing. We ducked behind the counter, hearts pounding. I glanced at the mirrors in the restrooms, the glass rippling like water. I remembered Chloe's words, "Break the rules." I grabbed a sugar shaker and hurled it at the nearest mirror. The glass shattered, shards raining down, the surface bubbling and boiling. The regulars shrieked, clutching their heads, their bodies convulsing. Chloe grabbed my hand, dragging me toward the kitchen. Reggie blocked our path, his form flickering, faces shifting. Truckers, waitresses, children, all melting into one. He held out a plate, the pie reassembled, whole and perfect. "Eat," he crooned, voice 1,000 voices. "Stay, be full." I raised the notebook, pages fluttering. "No more rules," I spat and hurled it into the fryer. Flames roared, smoke billowing, the fire alarm screaming. The diner shook, the walls splitting, the booths collapsing. Chloe and I ran, dodging falling debris, the regulars dissolving into puddles of syrup and teeth. The clock exploded, gears flying, time unraveling. The neon sign outside flickered, spelling nonsense, letters dripping down the glass. We burst through the front door, stumbling into the darkness. The diner behind us groaned, collapsing in on itself, the windows shattering, the roof caving in. Reggie's scream echoed across the desert, fading into the wind. We ran until our lungs burned, the horizon bleeding into dawn. We didn't look back, not until the sun rose, and the world felt real again. We ran until the world changed. The desert was still there, red cliffs, endless sky, the road stretching like a scar. But the air was different, thinner, the silence broken only by the wind and the crunch of gravel under our feet. Chloe and I collapsed by the roadside, lungs burning, sweat freezing on our skin in the pale dawn. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just breathed, alive and raw and trembling. The diner was gone. I looked back, half expecting to see the neon sign flickering in the distance, The glass front shattered, Reggie's silhouette waiting in the window. But there was nothing, just a patch of scorched earth, a blackened outline where the building had been. The highway was empty, no cars, no signs of life. It was as if the world had reset, erasing everything that had happened between midnight and sunrise. Chloe shivered beside me, hugging her knees to her chest. Her lips were blue, her eyes hollow. I wanted to say something comforting, something real, but the words caught in my throat. What could I say? That we'd survived? That it was over? I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I checked my arms, half expecting to see bruises or burns, some mark of what we'd endured. Instead, I found a single greasy handprint smeared across my forearm. 5 long, inhuman fingers, the print already fading in the light. I scrubbed at it, but the stain lingered, a shadow beneath the skin. Chloe noticed and looked away, her own hands trembling in her lap. We sat there until the sun rose, painting the cliffs gold and pink. The world felt fragile, unreal, as if it might shatter if I moved too quickly or spoke too loud. I thought about the rules, the ones I'd broken, the ones I'd followed out of fear. I realized now that the rules had never protected us. They'd only kept us trapped, obedient, easy prey for something that thrived on hunger and loneliness. A car appeared on the horizon, headlights cutting through the morning haze. I stood, shielding my eyes, heart pounding. The driver was an old man, face lined and wary, a battered, help wanted sign taped to his rear window. He slowed as he passed, eyes lingering on us for a moment before he drove on, the sign fluttering in the wind. Chloe stood beside me, her shadow long and thin on the asphalt. "What now?" she asked, voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't have an answer. I looked down the road, the empty stretch of highway leading into the unknown. My stomach growled, a deep, hollow ache that reminded me of the diner, the pie, the thing that wore Reggie's face. I wondered if I would ever feel full again, if the hunger would ever fade. We walked. There was nothing else to do. Each step felt heavy, the world tilting beneath my feet. I thought about the others, the trucker, the family, the woman in the sun hat. I wondered if they'd ever escaped, or if they were still trapped in that place, waiting for someone to break the rules, to shatter the cycle. As we walked, I glanced back one last time. The scorched patch of earth shimmered in the heat, the outline of the diner flickering like a mirage. For a moment, I saw the neon sign blaze to life, open, then pen, then nothing. In the window, a shadow moved, tall and thin, wearing a paper hat. Reggie's smile glinted in the dawn, wide and hungry. I turned away, heart pounding. The greasy handprint on my arm itched, a reminder that some hungers never die, that some rules are just cages painted to look like doors. We walked into the sunrise, 2 survivors with empty stomachs and haunted eyes, the road stretching on forever. I didn't know where we were going, or if we could ever outrun what we'd left behind. But for now, we were free. For now, the diner was gone. But somewhere, out there in the endless desert, a new sign flickered to life. A new shift was about to begin, and the thing that wore faces, that fed on the lonely, was waiting, always waiting, for someone hungry enough to come inside.